Sorry. All right, so this is the second part of the sixth part, Taking Shelter of Krishna. And it's about really focused on this kind of pivotal verse of Bhagavad Gita, 1866. And abandon all varieties of religion. This is what you'll find in the Gita and Srila Prabhupada's Gita. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. And so last time we looked at that word surrender, and I made a case for replacing that verse with take shelter of Krishna. And I gave different reasons why that works, and also why it's beneficial. And it's, because we have certain kind of common, conventional, modern understanding of surrender, and it's not a very pleasant thing. If you're overpowered, by an enemy or an opponent, you're forced to do something, you lose your freedom, you become a prisoner or a slave. It's something you don't want to do. It's something, it's forced by a stronger force, forces you to do it. It's not something you desire. So it's like, and so so Prabhupada, the case I made is that the word sharanam, which he translates as surrender, he translates as shelter many times. It is kind of one of the major connotations if you look in the Sanskrit dictionary. And Prabhupada also uses it. I easily found a quotation where Prabhupada was talking about that verse in a lecture, and he translated the verse that way, taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. So what Krishna wants is a lot more like shelter than it is what we usually understand surrender to mean. Okay? It doesn't mean it's a wrong translation, but we have certain negative connotations attached to it. And so surrender means it's a demand that's made, and where shelter is an invitation. All right, surrender is forced, and shelter is a free choice. I seek out shelter. Surrender leaves you as like a prisoner or a slave, or completely without any agency. And the shelter allows for an actual connection, relationship there. Surrender means it's one-sided. It's for the benefit of the conquering party. And shelter means it can have two sides, and both parties can benefit. On one side, it's the surrender part. It's done unwillingly, usually against your will. You're resisting, and taking shelter can be done very happily. You tend to people when they're forced to surrender, like put your hands up, come out with your hands up. It's usually they think their life has lost value, and shelter you can find value. So this is the kind of thing. So what I think what happens to us, unfortunately, even if we know somewhat that the surrender doesn't quite mean that, just in the back of our minds, we always have those common meanings. And so it's because the word is used in a pivotal verse, we use it in conversation back and forth. We say, oh, I have to surrender. Or I say, you should surrender. And surrender has that kind of imperative thing. You should do this. You have to do this. And so I think sometimes those meanings really color that understanding in a negative way. And so for this course, I want to try to just use shelter because that has, I think it's more accurate in terms of what Krishna wants from us, and it doesn't have those kind of background meanings that may color our attitude. So we wanted to make surrender seem less intimidating. What Krishna was asking, this taking shelter, less intimidating by that, But then we're still left with Krishna as being the all-powerful, right? He says he's independent, he's all-powerful, he's the creator of everything. He has absolute power, absolute control. And in our human relationships, or there's the famous saying, right, that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And in our experience of dealing with people in power, it often isn't so pleasant that people use power for their own benefit, and if acting to our detriment is to their benefit, there's usually not any problem with doing that for them. right? So again, even going for shelter, you have some doubts. Who am I taking shelter of? And what's going to happen then? Even if it's willing, right? I'm going to go there and it's not forced. I'm actually receiving something, some protection, some refuge. That was the the word sharanam that Prabhupada translates as surrender. He translates other places as refuge or protection, you know. But if I'm doing it with somebody so powerful, could that not also be a frightening thing? Machiavelli, the Italian, I think it was in the I'm not sure if it was in the 1800s or earlier, but it was at a time when Italy was still separated into small kind of warring states. So he's kind of known as being someone who's ruthless. But one of the things he said, he gave advice. He wrote a book called The Prince, where he was giving advice to people who were ruling these kind of small kingdoms. And so sometimes, if a couple of small Italian kingdoms were fighting each other, one would try to go outside and get help from a greater power, typically France. And the French would come in and help them with the fight against they would take shelter of France, right? And France would come in and help them defeat their enemy. And Machiavelli was counseling against that, because he says, once the French are in, once the greater, or whoever the greater power is, then they're going to take advantage of the situation. You're going to have a bigger problem than you started. You had this little enemy state that was causing you trouble. And now, okay, 15th to 16th centuries is saying, okay, thank you. So much earlier, Italy was, fragmented until after 1870. So it was a long time. But anyway, so this is going on for a long time. And so anyway, that was it. And it was a good advice, because generally when you do that, when you bring in a greater power, they're going to make you're going to have to make some concessions to them. They're going to start interfering in your business as payment for them helping you out. They're not coming as in an altruistic way. So we may think a similar thing, right? Because of our ordinary experience with other humans, that if you take shelter of someone, maybe there might be even if you get protection, even if you get refuge, even if it's in some ways helpful, there may be a downside to it. And so today the focus is going to be looking at Krishna, seeing Krishna's character a little bit more, to see who it is that we're taking shelter of. And so I put it as that we're going to be contemplating Krishna's sweet nature. Understand who it is that we're trying to take shelter of, and I hopefully that will help us to be encouraged to do it, and willingly. Okay, so I have it broken down into kind of different components, and hopefully when those components are put together, you can see Krishna as this really quite wonderful being who actually would be very attractive to us to find shelter, refuge, protection from him. So let's take a look. So the first thing I say is that Krishna feels actually a pretty deep connection with everyone. All of us small beings, all souls. It means in all humans, animals, plants, every place there's a soul, Krishna feels connected already. And as support of that, I have Bhagavad Gita 15:7, where Krishna says, the living entities, that means the souls, in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. It's called mama vangsho, my little pieces of me, portions of me. Angshas is a little portion of me. And it says, due to conditional life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So he identifies all the souls as being like pieces of himself, of the same kind of substance he has. And so if he's going to create things that are kind of little portions of himself, I think the implication there is that he values those. He says they're mine, and not necessarily in a sort of way where, okay, I own them and can do whatever I want. He would. Why does he create them out of something so valuable as like kind of a part of his essence, part of his energy? I think there's a kind of a notion there that they're valuable to him. And then in 435, Krishna says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but a part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. So then again, he sees this connection with them. He sees some, I believe it indicates he sees some value there. And then here, even better to show his kind of his goodwill towards us. He says in Bhagavad Gita 14:4, he says, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. So he has like a paternal outlook towards his little parts, which he says are mine. You know, he identifies with them in some way. So I mean, in this case, we want to presume that he's a good father. But we have different types of examples, I guess. Not all fathers are great, but that Krishna has a real fatherly outlook towards all the souls. So there's it starts out there already is a connection in Krishna's mind. So that's the first thing, and it seems like a favorable connection in his mind. That helps us, right? It's good to know if we're going to come closer to him. And then there's one more actually. It says, this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 20, 108, and 109. It's two verses together. It says, it is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and the manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, like a molecular particle of sunshine or fire. So again, this is a small essence, you know, a small, like a small particle of sunshine, or a spark from the fire. Sometimes Prabhupada talks like that. And again, so when we hear this thing, one thing we mentioned also last time, when we hear this thing that we're eternally servants of Krishna, this is again, servitude oftentimes doesn't come with a very favorable connotation, and here it may sound like it's one-sided. We read the purport last week in the 9th chapter of the Gita, where Prabhupada says that Krishna becomes the devotee of his devotee. It's a reciprocal relationship. And he used that example of jewelry. He says, if you have a nice, beautiful diamond, and you put that diamond in a beautiful golden setting, it's more beautiful than either component separately. And so he says, Krishna is like the diamond, and the devotee is like the golden ring. And he says that when so it says that the devotee wants to please Krishna, and Krishna wants to please them. It's a reciprocal relationship. So when we hear that we're servants of Krishna, it's this connection where each one is wanting the welfare of the other. It's a reciprocal relation, not just a one-sided one. So again, he sees them as beings that will be connected with him. Constitutional position to be an eternal servant, which means that he's also connected with them, and he becomes their well-wisher and servant. Prabhupada says he becomes the devotee of his devotee. So again, he sees a deep connection with us, a potential one that's there. And he values that. Now, the second thing is that Krishna cares about everybody, all souls. And there's I just have one verse that really, where he mentions that. This is 529, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 29. He says, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this is kind of a little brief thumbnail of why we can feel comfortable to take shelter of Krishna. Because what Krishna says is you don't have to worry about any other kinds of religious activities or dharmas. He says you can leave those aside. And just take shelter of me, because here he says, I am the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. So all kind of religious duties ultimately all the different dharmas, all the different practices. Krishna says that he creates those paths. He's the reason why you get some benefit from them, and so you can bypass them. They're all subordinate to him. You go right to the source of all these things, and if you please him, you can get the benefit of everything else. So you don't need anything else. You just need him. He's at the top of the ladder. So if people are doing pious activities, if people are doing various kinds of sacrifices or austerities or other kinds of religious practices, ultimately those come from Krishna, and ultimately ultimately, know it or not, he's the one who's being aimed at through those things. He says, you just come directly to me and have the benefit of everything easily. And then he's the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. So if you want shelter, protection, you need whoever it is to have some influence. We are tiny beings in a very large world, and the world oftentimes seems quite hostile. So people want to try to increase their own personal power if they possibly can, in order to feel safe in this very insecure seeming situation. And so then Krishna is somebody who has the power to give shelter. And then even more importantly, that he's the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. So he has your welfare at heart. But coming to him doesn't mean that suddenly you only have to worry about him and you're not valued. He's your benefactor. He's going to help you, and he wishes you well. He's going to help you. It's going to be reciprocal. So that's almost like a little thumbnail of why we should do it. We're going to discuss it in more detail, but that's kind of interesting. The main thing here I want to say that he's the benefactor and well-wisher. So again, he cares for the souls. The person has a connection. I think it implies that there's value there. And then here it says, even now he cares for everybody. It's the word he uses there is surit, which kind of means like really good-hearted. Hrit means heart, and su is a positive intensifier. And usually a surit is a friend who oftentimes is somehow in power or influence above you, and who then can help you. Someone who's in a higher position somehow, and then wants to help you as a helper instead of someone who wants to take from you. But it really kind of literally means really good-hearted. Surit, good-hearted towards you. And then Krishna, there's more places than this, but in the 15th chapter of the Gita, there's a series of verses where he shows that even right now, whoever you are, Krishna's helping you. He's doing things for you right now. He's already doing it, even though we haven't taken shelter, even though we may not even know of his existence. He's already doing it. And I think this is really important. Right? Because you may think that Krishna is just completely neutral up there, and if we approach him, then he'll respond. And we're going to hear about that also soon. But it's more, Krishna's already engaged with us. He sees the connection. He really feels himself as the one who wishes you well and wants to help. He's already doing things for us. Okay, and so we'll go through those verses and some of the purports here a little bit, parts of the purport. So it's 12, 15, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Okay, so chapter 15, text 12 is the splendor of the sun. The word there is teja, so it means like effulgence. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. And Prabhupada comments on that verse. He says, so if one can understand that the light and the splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. And he explains why. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. Without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. It says these are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. That we see that Krishna is already doing stuff for us. So how is he going to be some kind of horrible taskmaster? He's already doing, even if we don't care about him, he's already doing stuff for us. He's making it possible for us to survive here. He's already engaged with us. So what happens is the desire to be connected with Krishna actually becomes is really comes from gratitude. That's really the entryway into having a real deep connection with Krishna. There's gratitude towards him. Okay, then in 15:13, he says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. It says in the Vedas that the moonlight makes vegetables and plant more nutritious. And then Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, it is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Some of the other commentators in our line, Prabhupada followed quite a bit Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary. He says that the earth would crumble to dust beneath our feet. I think Prabhupada's kind of alluding to this a little bit here indirectly. So he says that without the Lord's power, the earth would just poof into dust, and we would have no place to be. And then in 14, he should give something also kind of basic. He says, I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. And I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. I think it's chewed, licked, what is it? Chewed, licked, sucked and drunk, the 4 kinds, in case you're wondering. All kinds will be suitable. Then 15:15, he says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Veda, Vedanta, and the knower of the Vedas. So for the first part, I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And Prabhupada explains the import of that in his purport. He says, the living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body. So when we left our body in the last life, we forgot who we are and what we were doing. He says, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Supreme Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So then when we take birth again, some of the basic desires that we had, some of the basic fears we had, some of the basic objectives that we have, our basic personality comes online because of Krishna as the super soul in the heart. He reminds us of, okay, this is what you were doing. This is what you were interested in. This is what you wanted. This is what you feared. This is who you are. And so that is awakened by Krishna. So he says, although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. So also we'll hear later how Krishna in the heart also tries to bring us towards him. Hear about more of that. So in any case, this is what you have. Krishna is helping us in so many practical ways. He's thinking of us, and he's actually helping us right now. Whether we acknowledge him, whether we want connection with him or not, he's doing that because of his feeling of connection with all the souls and his feeling of being a benefactor to everybody, caring about everybody, regardless of their orientation towards him. Okay. The third part of his sweet nature is he lets us choose in the relationship. We kind of get to determine how the relationship goes. He lets us choose if we want a relationship, when we want to try to have the relationship, how and how much we want to be connected with him. And that way, he's not pushing. He's available. It's an invitation, not like a demand. And in Bhagavad Gita 4:11, Krishna says, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. And so Prabhupada makes some points in his commentary. He says, Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. Right, so this is the connection we'll have depends upon us. What's our desire? And Prabhupada goes along in the same commentary. He says, the pure devotees both here and in the transcendental abode associate with him in person and are able to render personal service to the Lord and thus derive transcendental bliss in his loving service. So those who want a deep personal connection with Krishna, they can have that. Krishna is open to that. Then he says, as for those who are impersonalists, those who he said that they think of God more in terms of the great light of an impersonal situation, the Brahman, the Brahma Jyoti, and not interested in the personal form. Then he says Krishna helps also by absorbing them into his effulgence. So he allows them, because that says that the Brahman is the rays from his body. There's a verse in the Ishopanishad where people who exit the material universe and enter into the transcendental realm, they see this light, beautiful light first. And there's a verse in the Ishopanishad where the devotee prays. He says, please, Lord, move aside that light so that I can see your face. But other people, they're not so happy with dealing with personal, having personal relationships in this world are so problematic, but they don't want to do that anymore. They just want to be merged into the light. And so yes, that's also me. You can do that. He lets them do it. For those who are fruitive workers, people who want to do good deeds, do good karma, and build up their life that way, right? The Lord awards the desired results of their prescribed duties. The karma only works because of the Lord's sanction. So he says, okay, that's what you want. You want to try to do well and then get good karma from that. Okay, I'll help you with that. And those who are yogis seeking mystical powers, he says he awards them those powers. And so the way is up to us. It says all these things are happening because of me, and you decide which one you want to be connected with, and he'll respond accordingly. And then he says in 7:18, all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to gain me the highest and most perfect goal. So here he's talking about, there's a place in the 7th chapter where he says there's kind of 4 people that generally come to Krishna to try to take shelter in him. You have people who have they need something that they can't get. So they need some supernatural help. They have something that they can't get rid of. They have a problem, or a disease, or something that's an obstacle they need to get rid of. They'll come to Krishna because hey, I can't fix it myself. I have to come to God. The third one is this is kind of curious. This is the 4th kind is someone who really has knowledge of Krishna. We're trying to give ourselves knowledge of Krishna here, so that we'll be this type of person and encouraged to really come close to Krishna as we have the opportunity to. And so he says those I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service is sure to attain me the highest and most perfect goal. So, but he says the other ones are fine, right? He says all the other ones who want something from him, they're fine. Here Prabhupada mentions that in the purport of this verse. He says, it is not that devotees who are less complete in knowledge are not dear to the Lord. So he says the person who has knowledge of him, because they really know who he is and what the situation is, and they really want to have a connection. He says it's not that devotees who are less complete in knowledge are not dear to the Lord. But devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because there is an exchange of affection. So Krishna's happy that, okay, you need something, he's happy that you came to him. He takes that as some affection. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit. And when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also develop a deeper connection to Krishna. He says they also advance in devotional service. So whatever connection we want, especially if it's towards him, Krishna really, he's touched by that. Even if it's more like, hey, I'll do something for you, you do something for me, and and maybe we'll see what happens after that. But it's not necessarily looking for a really super deep connection. And so Krishna's he's easygoing in so many different ways like this, right? And then Krishna says, Prabhupada says in the same purport, he says, but the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. So this kind of gives you another hint of the kind of connection Krishna really would desire and what's available to us. And that kind of leads into the next thing, is that although Krishna responds as we desire, he actually is much more eager for the relationship than we are, and he has that desire that it be a close one. He's not neutral, but he'll act with you neutrally. He has an actual desire, but he respects yours. So it's not just like he's, okay, whatever you want is fine, it's all the same to me. It's not really all the same to him. He would prefer that we have a deep connection with him. He wants that. But he respects us. When you have love, that you respect the other person's wishes and desires and their freedom. And so he gives us that. But really he really wants it. It's not just, okay, whatever you want, you can take it. And he says it, but he said, but what I would really like is to have a deep connection with you. This is powerful. And so in 337, in Prabhupada's commentary, Bhagavad Gita 337, it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. So there's a reason why we exist, actually, because there's really, the soul can, well, beings can have kind of three different ways of existing. The one we're familiar with is that we feel an emptiness or a lack of satisfaction, and happiness and satisfaction therefore has to be pursued. Satisfaction is not a given, it's something that has to be acquired, has to be pursued, has to be attained. And we think that's completely natural because that's how we've lived our whole lives. We know from all the various accounts that you'll find in the scriptures that there are yogis and sages and devotees who can, and in Bhagavad Gita it says that you can be, that the soul is by nature fully satisfied, prasanatma. That by nature existence is supposed to be happiness. You're not supposed to need something. It's called atmarama, being self-satisfied. We're just supposed to be happy. There's not any emptiness in us. When the soul is awake, just feel complete contentment. Prasanatma is complete contentment. And then the third one is when there's love, the soul overflows with joy. And so Krishna, he can, of course, he's in his root condition is in Atmarama. But if he felt like he had needs, he could fulfill them so easily. Like he can create anything he wants at any moment. He could divide himself into multiple forms and have all the experiences he wanted. So if happiness had to be acquired, he could do that. If he could also just be fully satisfied and just be kind of a unitary thing. It could be the one completely undifferentiated being. Just because he says actually everything that exists is Krishna. It's all his power of existence. So why does the one become many? And because with love, with it takes two or more to have love. I mean, you can have a generalized feeling of happiness and love when you're self-satisfied, but that gets concentrated when you have others. Love means you want the welfare of the other. You want to do something for the other. And so that's really the whole idea behind his creating different souls, is that he and the souls could attain something better than either finding happiness on the outside, being self-satisfied by experiencing love with each other. And Krishna is so wonderful that it causes love to become very intense. So there's a purpose behind his creating us, because he sees this benefit for him and us being able to have the highest level of fulfillment and happiness. And here's where he says that this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text 33, Prabhupada's commentary says, he is so kind that he constantly remains with the living being as Paramatma, the Lord in the heart, and always tries to convert the living being towards real happiness. So we heard how he's in and previously how he's in charge of remembrance, forgetfulness, and knowledge. And Prabhupada says also he can awaken knowledge. He's there to support and give us little gentle pushes if we have some interest in our spiritual life and spirit and interest in him. He gives us little pushes that helps. We'll have to get understandings like the inner voice. The Paramatma speaks to us like that. And so we have a little interest in Krishna. Say, yeah. Or we had some interest at some point in Krishna. Say, remember? Don't you remember that? You get little nudges from the inside. So he's trying to work with us. So again, he's showing that he has a certain desire himself, but he still has to give us our freedom to do it. So he can only give us little nudges, but he's working in that direction. And then in Canto 1 of the Bhagavatam, chapter 2, text 17, Prabhupada's commentary is also really quite lovely. He says, the Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. We've been talking about that. But it says, when he sees that the devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord, and this is the part that I really want to emphasize, the Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. So usually we may oftentimes think that, okay, here's Krishna. We want to have some contact with him, but he's great. He's the greatest of the great. He's independent. Usually when we have to even make relationships with regular folks, but to speak of people who are somehow above us, we have to really prove ourselves. They're going to be like, this. Okay, well, let's see who you are. Why should I waste my time on you? Why should I be connected with you? What are you going to be for me? And we have to prove ourselves. But here it says, no, he says Krishna is actually more anxious to have the connection than we can be anxious. So he's not exactly neutral. And that he's more than that. And what to speak about this way, okay, well, prove yourself to me. So we have a tendency to, again, extrapolate from material experiences to spiritual experiences. That's kind of unharmful. So this kind of leads into the next thing. Krishna is eager to help if we desire a deep connection with him. So not only is he not going to say, well, you have to prove yourself, show me that you're special. He says, look, and because it's difficult, we have all of this inertia to be connected with normal things. We're distracted from our spiritual lives. And so we may even desire Krishna, but there's so many distractions. It's very difficult. The mind and the senses. There's so much disturbance. How can we defeat that? So Krishna helps. He says, I'll help you to overcome the obstacles. Because why? Because he really has a preference. And so if you show a desire here, I not only will reciprocate with that desire, I'll help you. I'll take you by the hand and help to lead you through this. And so in Bhagavad Gita 10:11, it says, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. This is a jnana dipena bhasvata. This is the lamp of knowledge comes in, and I help to clear away their ignorance. He says in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2:17, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. And again, he says he appears in the heart and tries to work a little magic in there to help us fulfill our desire for him and to remove some of the blockages. He's taking an active role in our spiritual life. And then in 1:2:17 again, the purport prophet says, one cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. So again, this is he begins to, Arjuna asks in the third chapter of the Gita, says, why do I do the things I don't want to do? It seems like I'm overpowered by force. So because we have so much inertia. And then in the Nectar of Instruction, there's the verse 3 in Prabhupada's commentary, says, similarly, in devotional service, surrender means that one has to become confident. So if we take that being shelter, if we take shelter of Krishna, we have to be confident. The devotee thinks Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. He says, this is called confidence. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. And then Prabhupada mentions, how even if we begin the process and we don't complete it, how nothing is ever lost. Krishna also mentions just in Bhagavad Gita. This is a purport from Nectar of Instruction, that same verse 3. He says, devotional service is so pure and perfect that once having begun, one is forcibly dragged to ultimate success. Forcibly dragged to ultimate success. He says, sometimes a person will give up his ordinary material engagements and out of sentiment take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and thus began the preliminary execution of devotional service. Even if such an immature devotee falls down, there is no loss on his part. Although a fallen devotee may take his next birth in a low family, his devotional service will nonetheless resume from where it left off. Devotional service is a hoitikiya pratiyata, causeless and continuous. It is not the effect of any mundane cause, nor can it be terminated by any mundane cause or permanently curtailed by any material interruption. So whatever progress we make is permanent. That's also something beautiful about Krishna. He accepts even very partial connection and remembers that. He'll help us to remember that the next life. And the Super say, hey, remember that? Remember Krishna? Remember? Well, yeah, when we do. So the upshot of all of that, I think if you take all of those things together, you can state it simply, Krishna loves us right here, right now, no matter who we are. I think all those things together show that there's love there. Right? He feels a connection. He wants to help. He's already helping even if we don't care. He's neutral. He gives us all freedom to choose how, when, where, why. But then he has that desire to be connected. So that he loves us. I just stated simply, Krishna loves us. So if we're approaching Krishna for shelter, we're approaching someone who loves us. And I've got a verse here from the Srimad Bhagavatam, beautiful, from the 9th canto, chapter 4, text 68, where Krishna reveals himself. He says, the pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. So this is the invitation that Krishna is giving to us. And we can see how it's reciprocal. That's because Krishna loves us already. And if we love him, we can learn to love him, this situation can obtain. Okay. So it's 1:45. If there's anything, any comments or questions right now, let's take them. Is this all clear as mud? Or what? Are there anything you have to say or have any questions at this point?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for sharing so many beautiful slokas with us today. Giri Hare Krishna, that was so wonderful. And it's a good reminder to, sometimes we as devotees, like you said, and Roger Hart said this too, like devotees, like we're spiritually striving, but like, we're just people. So we're not always going to be like perfect all the time and we're not always going to get it right. But to know that Krishna still loves us, even though we're like imperfect. And as long as we're like trying to do the right thing, Krishna will help us. And it gives us a lot of hope that we can get to that point of like being fully Krishna conscious. So I was really happy to hear that. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Krishna's love is unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about this a little in one of the future classes. How we can understand that Krishna is loving us, no matter what we are, in all circumstances, and still have room for thinking how we can grow. Because it's not meant that we're supposed to feel stagnated by that. Like, okay, Krishna loves me, I must be perfect. But no, what happens is that when we feel Krishna's love, there should be some gratitude, and we want to then show something back, reciprocate to Krishna. The bhakti ultimately is an exchange of gratitude. I also had a little in the one verse where we said where as when you surrender unto him, he rewards them accordingly. The word there is bhajami, and that's the Prabhupada he translates it as reward in that verse. Other places he translates it as reciprocate. Other places overwhelmingly the biggest thing he says is worship, or offer obeisances, or bestow my favor, or to offer my worshipable respect. So there's like again a feeling of great affection coming from Krishna when he's reciprocating. Like Krishna is grateful. Krishna is grateful. See, people who are usually people who are in positions of power or wealth or opulence, they're not very grateful. You have to really do something special for them to feel they've already got that. They've already got that. They've done, but they've done more things than that. What can you do for them? I've already got people that I'm paying to do that. That's the problem. So people aren't easily impressed. So Krishna has everything. He's the all-powerful. He's the creator of everything and can create whatever he wants, but he's grateful. This is how sweet he is, his sweet nature. He's grateful. And so when he is reciprocating with people, because he already loves them, because he already wants that connection, even if it's kind of not such a close type of approach that they've made, there's something from his heart that he gives them when he reciprocates, when he rewards them. It's like so it can be that word bhajami can mean worship. There's something from his heart. It shows something from his heart. So hopefully, if we think about these things, we'll begin to find, taking shelter to be a really exciting proposition. We're given the freedom. Krishna can give us shelter. He can help us in so many ways. And better yet, he can give us something that we can't get anyplace else, which is the ability to experience the highest type of love, which Krishna is looking for. And when we see how kind and considerate he is, when we see how he's our well-wisher, when he wants to help us in so many ways, when he lets us take the lead, because real love takes freedom. So he doesn't want us to enter into something that we don't want. Just approach me however you like, however little, however much. And if you want to get closer and it's difficult, I'll give you a helping hand. I'm not here to make you prove yourself to be better than others. Sometimes we think that to become a devotee of Krishna, we have to become better. We have to distinguish ourselves, right? Because so many ways we have to distinguish ourselves to achieve certain ends. We have to compete with others. That's not what it is. If there's some sincerity in your heart to be connected with Krishna, Krishna will help you. He won't say, okay, when you finally get this score, when you finally have done all this, then I'll accept you. He says, okay, I'll help you get there. Because that's what I want. So Krishna has this immensely sweet nature that should be attractive to us. So this whole notion of a surrender that may, if we take the word wrong, may seem painful, and ending our freedom, and putting us completely at the mercy of somebody else, becomes this really sweet opportunity, something sweeter than we ever could have imagined, actually. So I didn't get to everything. Let's see. Oh, I got one more thing for us to show Krishna's love. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, text 16, Prabhupada's purport. He says, in Bhagavad Gita, in the 16th chapter, a vivid description of the asuras, those who are opposed to God. They even want to fight him. They think he exists and they would like to take over. They don't like the idea of a God. They would like to be. They don't want to have anybody more powerful above them. So a vivid description of the asuras is given in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, of ignorant life. Lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink into the lower animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. Krishna says like that because he's reacting to their desires. They want him gone or they want him dead. They don't want to have anything to do with him. So Krishna responds he says they never approach me. He says their karma, of course, drags them down into lower forms of life because usually they're causing harm to others. And he says they never come to me. So he says they never come in the Gita. And then Prabhupada says, here's how Krishna, because they really can't, because they really dislike him. So he can't force them, right? He's letting everybody have their own desires. So Krishna finds a way around it. He cheats a little on that. He says these asuras are gradually rectified to God consciousness by the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors, his devotees, in different countries according to the supreme will. And so Krishna, he's not allowed. They say, I don't even want you. I don't want to deal with you. I don't even want you to exist. So Krishna can't impose himself on them. But then he sends his devotees, who then somehow convince them. So even for the people that dislike him, he goes out of his way. He still keeps his promise to be, to respond to what people's desires are and not force them. So he still keeps their freedom, but he uses this tricky way of his devotees, who are very attractive and very sweet, to change their minds. So even the persons that are hostile to him, he loves them. So this is love, right? You love no matter what. He loves them no matter what. Doesn't mean that we want to imitate that process, but I think it shows Krishna's love for us. Yeah, I think we'll pause here, and we're going to talk about next time the power and why it's so important to realize that Krishna loves us. By realizing that will really help us if we have some intention of becoming closer to Krishna. Whether we're thinking of trying to be connected with Krishna, we're going to try to take shelter there, or we want to deepen the amount of shelter we've already taken. How this is really powerful. So I had some things already prepared for that, but we're running out of time, and it's a good kind of place to jump off into next time. So, any further comments or questions before we wrap up? I thank all of you for taking your time. Okay, well, maybe.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Shweta. Yes. Oops. Maybe she just wrapped off. Say goodbye. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I won't keep you any longer than need be. We only have like 4 minutes left anyway. So it doesn't make sense to start a new topic. So thank you, and
thank you. Hare Krishna.
We'll see you next time.
Hare Krishna. Gary, thank you so much for the nice class. I look forward to seeing you next week.